Hey there. Let's say you just robbed a bank and got away with $10 million in cash. You're rich now, right? Well, not so fast, because here's the crazy part. You can't actually spend it. Let's call you Tony. So, Tony, you can't buy a mansion because the seller will ask, where did this money come from? You can't just deposit it in a bank because banks report giant cash deposits straight to the government. You can't even buy a nice car without someone getting suspicious. So there you are, sitting on a mountain of money you technically can't touch. Sounds like a strange problem to have, huh? Well, this is the exact problem every criminal on Earth faces, and the solution they came up with has a name: money laundering. You've probably heard this term in movies, in the news, and shows like Breaking Bad or Ozark. But what does it actually mean? How do criminals turn dirty money into clean money? Why is it so incredibly hard to catch? And most importantly, how does this hidden world affect you and the money in your own pocket? In this video, we'll cover everything you need to know about money laundering. So, let's get started. Section 1. What is money laundering? Well, money laundering is the process of taking money earned from illegal activities and making it look like it came from a legitimate legal source. Criminals call the illegal money dirty money, and the goal is to clean or wash it so it looks completely normal. That's literally why it's called laundering, like washing your dirty clothes, but with cash. But why do criminals even need to do this? Let's go back to Tony. Tony makes millions in cash from selling drugs. The problem isn't earning the money, the problem is explaining it. If Tony suddenly buys a Lamborghini and a giant house with a briefcase full of cash, the government will ask, "You reported zero income this year, so how are you buying all this?" That's a giant red flag. Tax authorities and banks are trained to spot exactly this kind of thing. So Tony's dirty money is basically useless to him until he can invent a fake but believable story of where it came from. And that, my friend, is what laundering does. It builds that fake story. Now, here's a fun little history. You might have heard that the term came from the famous gangster Al Capone. The legend says that back in the 1920s, Capone bought a bunch of laundromats, places to wash clothes, and mixed his illegal alcohol money with the coins from the washing machines. Because it was a cash business, nobody could tell which dollars were clean and which were dirty. Cool story, right? Well, plot twist. It's probably a myth. Laundromats didn't even exist until 1934, and Capone was already sitting in prison by 1931. And funny enough, they got him for tax evasion, not for his other crimes. The term actually became popular much later in the 1970s, during the Watergate scandal. So sorry to ruin the story, but hey, at least now you know. Now that you know what laundering is, let's see how Tony actually does it. Section 2. The 3 stages of money laundering. So washing money isn't just one simple step. It usually happens in 3 stages: placement, layering, and integration. Let's break them down one by one. The first stage is placement. This is where Tony takes his dirty cash and slips it into the financial system for the first time, and this is actually the most dangerous stage, because this is where he's most likely to get caught. Why? Because banks are watching. In many countries, if you deposit a large amount of cash, let's say over $10,000, the bank must report it to the government automatically. So Tony can't just walk in with a suitcase full of money and drop it on the counter. That would basically be screaming, "I'm a criminal," in the middle of the bank. Instead, he uses a clever trick called smurfing, or structuring. Instead of depositing $100,000 at once, he breaks it into tiny amounts, like $900 here, $800 there, spread across many different people, many different bank accounts, and many different days. Each deposit is small and boring, so no alarm goes off and nobody blinks. Tony even hires regular people, called money mules, to make these little deposits for him. Slowly, drip by drip, the dirty cash sneaks into the system without raising a single red flag. The second stage is layering. This is where things get complicated on purpose. Now that the money is inside the system, Tony wants to hide its trail. So he moves it around, again and again and again. He sends it from one account to another, then to a company in another country, then to a third account, then converts it into something else, then moves it once more. Think of it like this. Imagine spilling one drop of ink into a giant swimming pool. Once it spreads out, good luck ever finding that exact drop again. That's layering. The more layers and the more countries involved, the harder it becomes for investigators to trace the money back to the original crime. A favorite tool here is the shell company. A shell company is a business that exists only on paper. It has a name, a bank account, maybe even a fancy website, but it doesn't actually do anything. No real products, no real employees, nothing. Criminals use these fake companies to send fake payments to each other, making dirty money look like normal, boring business income. The third and final stage is integration. This is the finish line. The money has now been washed and moved around so many times that it looks completely clean. So Tony brings it back into his life as legitimate money. He might buy a mansion, invest in a business, or buy expensive art. And now, if anyone asks where the money came from, he has a spotless paper trail ready to go. The money is finally free to spend, and it looks 100% legal. So simply put, placement sneaks the money in, layering hides where it came from, and integration brings it back out looking clean. Now, let's look at the actual tricks criminals use in the real world. Section 3. Common laundering tricks. Now that you know the 3 stages, let's talk about the specific methods, because honestly, some of these are genuinely clever. The first and most classic trick is the cash-heavy business. Criminals absolutely love businesses that naturally handle a lot of cash, like car washes, nail salons, restaurants, and yes, laundromats. Why? Because it's so easy to lie about how much money the business really made. Let's say Tony buys a car wash that actually washes 20 cars a day and earns $200. But on paper, Tony reports that he washed 100 cars and earned $1,000. That extra $800? It's his dirty drug money, now magically disguised as car wash income. The business becomes what's called a front. This is exactly the trick from Breaking Bad, if you've seen it. The second trick is real estate. Criminals buy expensive houses and apartments, often through those shell companies. So nobody knows who really owns them. Property is perfect because it's worth a lot, and prices are easy to bend. In fact, some studies suggest a huge chunk of major laundering schemes involve real estate. The third trick is trade-based laundering. This one is sneaky. Let's say Tony ships a box of cheap pens worth $100 to a partner in another country, but writes on the invoice that the pens are worth $1 million. The partner pays $1 million, and boom, the money has crossed the border disguised as a normal trade deal. To the outside world, it just looks like 2 businesses trading, but really it's dirty money quietly on the move. And the fourth trick is casinos. Tony walks in with dirty cash, buys a big pile of chips, plays a few games, loses a little on purpose, then cashes out and asks for a check. Now that casino check makes it look like he simply got lucky gambling. Clean, simple, believable. So criminals have tons of creative tricks up their sleeve, but the big question is, do they actually get away with it? Let's find out. Section 4. Do they get away with it? Well, here's the scary answer. Most of the time, yes. According to the United Nations, somewhere between $800 billion and $2 trillion is laundered every single year. That's around 2 to 5% of the entire world's economy, just vanishing into the shadows. And here's the truly shocking part. Experts estimate that around 90% of money laundering is never even detected. Out of all the dirty money in the world, only a tiny sliver is ever caught and recovered. Let that sink in for a second. So why is it so hard to stop? Well, remember what Tony did. The money crossed many banks, many companies, and many countries. And here's the catch. Each bank only sees its own little piece of the puzzle. No single bank can see the full trail. On top of that, criminals deliberately use countries with weak rules, where nobody asks too many questions. It's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle when every player is only holding one piece and refusing to show it to anyone else. Now you might be thinking, okay, but why should I even care? I'm not a criminal. Well, here's why it affects you. Money laundering is the thing that lets drug empires, human traffickers, and corrupt politicians keep operating because it lets them actually enjoy their profits. When that dirty money floods into real estate, it drives up house prices in normal cities, making homes more expensive for regular people like you. And when banks get caught and pay billions in fines, guess who often ends up covering that through higher fees? Yeah, the customers. So this shadow world isn't nearly as far from your daily life as you might think. But it's not like nobody is fighting back. Governments created something called AML, which stands for anti-money laundering, a giant set of rules banks are forced to follow. There's also KYC, or Know Your Customer, which is the exact reason your bank asks for your ID and documents when you open an account. And there's a global watchdog called the FATF that keeps a kind of naughty list of countries with weak controls, and landing on that list can seriously wreck a country's economy. Banks that fail to stop laundering get slapped with massive fines. In fact, in just the first half of 2025, global fines jumped over 400% compared to the year before. So the war is very real. It's just really, really hard to win. Now, let's look at some jaw-dropping real-life cases. Section 5. Real-life examples. All right, story time, and trust me, these are absolutely wild. Let's start with the biggest and most ridiculous one, the 1MDB scandal. So Malaysia created a government fund called 1MDB that was supposed to help develop the country and improve people's lives. Instead, a man named Joe Low and others allegedly stole around $4.5 billion from it. And how did he spend it? Oh, you are going to love this. He bought a $250 million mega yacht, complete with a helipad and a movie cinema. He bought a private jet for $35 million. He spent over $300 million on art. He threw insane parties, once sending 23 bottles of ridiculously expensive champagne to a celebrity. But here's the best part, the part you genuinely cannot make up. He used the stolen money to help fund a Hollywood movie. And that movie was The Wolf of Wall Street. Yes, a film about financial crime, funded by actual financial crime. You literally could not write comedy this good. Next, let's talk about the banks because they are not innocent here either. Take Wachovia, a giant American bank. Between 2004 and 2007, it allowed Mexican drug cartels to launder nearly $390 billion through its system. And the fine? Just $160 million. That's like stealing a car and getting a parking ticket. Then there's Danske Bank, whose tiny branch in Estonia pushed through around $228 billion of suspicious money, most of it flowing in from Russia. It became the single biggest laundering scandal in European history. And finally, the modern version, cryptocurrency. As money went digital, so did laundering. Criminals now use tools called mixers, like one famous service called Tornado Cash. So how does a mixer actually work? Imagine 1,000 people each throw a $100 bill into a giant blender. Mix it all up, and then everybody grabs a random bill back out. Now it's impossible to know whose money was whose. That's basically what a crypto mixer does. It takes crypto from thousands of people, jumbles it all together, then sends it back out, snapping the link between sender and receiver. A North Korean hacking group called Lazarus famously used Tornado Cash to wash hundreds of millions of dollars in stolen crypto, money that experts say helps fund the regime. But here's the twist. Crypto isn't nearly as anonymous as criminals think. Every single transaction is recorded forever, out in the open, on the blockchain. So smart investigators can sometimes follow the trail years later and catch them. It's a never-ending cat-and-mouse game between the criminals and the people hunting them. So, in conclusion, money laundering is basically the art of turning dirty money into clean money by sneaking it in, hiding its trail, and bringing it back out looking perfectly legal. It quietly funds some of the worst crimes on Earth, from drugs to corruption, and sadly, most of it slips by undetected. But governments, banks, and investigators are fighting back harder every single year. So the next time you hear money laundering in a movie, you'll know it's not just a random phrase, it's a multi-trillion-dollar shadow world hiding in plain sight. Because in the end, for criminals like Tony, it was never about stealing the money, it was about getting away with spending it. If you want me to make other videos explaining these topics, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.